Hello Internet, it's Daniel with Driving and Dragons, and today we are back, barely into August, just finished Independent Tabletop Role-Playing Game Month, and Wizards of the Coast has stepped in it again. But this time, I might not be so far against them. See you guys on the other side. Okay. So Wizards of the Coast just keeps finding new ways to step in large PR cow pies. They screwed over all their content creators with the OGL scandal. They have constantly done the woke thing that pisses off a large portion of their player base, because let's face it, a lot of old school Dungeons and Dragons players that have been around for a long time, these guys are older and tend to skew more socially conservative anyway. So they're pissing off a lot of their player base that actually has money in favor of a player base that is new, fickle, and a group of people who don't even play the game but are just very loud online. They have turned around and gone after monetization schemes with the player base that are seen as disingenuous or sneaky, trying to, taking away physical medium or making physical medium only available with PDFs, which try to drive people onto an online model where they can do a subscription service, which everybody knows is just a precursor to them taking away the physical books, sending Pinkertons to people's houses to confiscate legally obtained magic cards. And now they've decided to use AI-generated art in their new book. Now, I'm going to start off by pointing out where I think Wizards of the Coast 100% definitely stepped over ethical lines and really deserves heavy chastisement this time. That is, if the reports that are out there are true, Wizards reached out to freelance artists, had them create artwork for their new book, took in submissions, rejected those submissions so they therefore didn't have to pay for them or only had to pay a minimal amount for them, and then used AI to generate similar but legally distinct artwork in order to put in their book. That may not be illegal, but it is definitely unethical. It is a very shady business practice, and it is definitely the kind of thing that just shows you why we should not patronize Wizards of the Coast as long as they continue to behave in this manner. But now's the part where I tick off a lot of your internet wannabe warriors, internet wannabe lawyers, and that sort of thing. And that is, I'm just going to come out and say it, AI art is not only the future of this kind of commercial art, but AI art is actually a massive benefit to the small creator. It is not a thing where the large corporation suffers. This is actually something that helps level the playing field. First, let me get some of my opinions out of the way. They're informed opinions. They have a strong basis in facts that are already available, but they are opinions because most of this has not been adjudicated yet by a court of law. And to be perfectly honest, if it makes it to the Supreme Court, there's every opportunity that they just legislate from the bench and change what's out there. But AI art in and of itself is not a violation of people's copyright. Sorry, hate to inform people who want to sit here and say that AI scraping, which is where they take billions of different pieces of work or tons of different samples of a particular style and then turn around and create new artwork, scraping is not a copyright violation. As a matter of fact, Google and another company, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but two major suits have already been in place that have to do with AI scraping and other mediums, and the courts have found that it's 100% within the guidelines of fair use. And then when you look at anything the U.S. Trademark and Patent Office has put out so far, now they haven't commented directly on it other than to say that they're looking into it, and they've got there's some videos out there where they talk about setting up a team to look into it and analyze it and kind of put together what they think and investigate. But what they have done is a comic book was submitted for, to say, hey, we want copyright protection, but I created this book with AI. And what they found, of course, is that AI art, because AI art is not generated by a human, is not eligible for copyright protection. However, they did come back later and soften that decision and say that AI art can be copyrighted by the person who puts in the prompts, provided that whoever's putting in the prompts basically uses it as a tool and not as a stand-in for a contract artist. So if you put in enough original prompt and enough original work to generate an image, or if you generate an AI image and use it as a base and transform it into something different, basically I tell AI to write me a book or to write me a comic book, and then I go in and I adjust the storyline, correct a few things, change names, etc., enough to where it's a transformative work, then it is copyrightable. Both of those go off of the premise that the AI is not violating copyright of anybody else in and of itself, unless you put in a prompt that violates copyright. So, for example, if I go in and say, draw me the Terminator, I can be violating copyright and trademark for the Terminator. If I say, draw me the Predator, I can be violating copyright for the Predator. But if I put in a prompt for some nebulous alien creature that I've come up in my head, X number of heads, X number of feet, lizard scales, bat wings, etc., and I create an entirely new creature, just because it created that creature by taking samples of billions of other artists does not make it copyright infringement. And what it's been likened to, even in the language of the USPTO and some other judges that have had comments early on, and this is also the stance of the major AI companies in their lawsuits that are ongoing, is there is no copyright law that will invalidate or will make these AI sources in violation that will not also make every artist on the planet in violation. Why? Because everything has been done before. I'll use music as an example because music is easier to understand for people. I can have a copyright over a particular song that has a particular beat, time signature, progression, has a certain uniqueness to it, has a certain repetitive quality to it, such as when Vanilla Ice lost his lawsuit with Queen because of the Ice Ice Baby track that seems to have oversampled Under Pressure by Queen. But what I can't do is have a copyright over notes, scales, time signatures, arpeggios, keys, key changes, because these are just parts of the medium. I can't say, well, you used a C major scale in your song, you're violating my copyright because I used a C major scale before you. You can't have a copyright over words or sentence structure. You can't say I'm violating your copyright for your book because I'm stealing your style or I'm filching your style or whatnot because I use basic English grammar in my writing, or even certain literary or rhetorical tricks in my writing. The same thing holds true here. If anything, the AI is less infringing than the human artist, because where the human artist spent years going to art school, studying, practicing drawing, looking at hundreds of different artists and their styles and taking those tricks, taking those techniques, taking those particular ways to put stuff together, AI looks at billions of samples in a second. So it is stealing less per artwork, per piece, than any human artist in that regard. So if you turn around and you say that because the AI samples all this different stuff, and then you have to turn around and say that a human artist has the same problem. I've heard the asinine argument that, oh, well, AI can't be inspired. It can only copy small pieces. It can only make basically a giant collage. Well, that's really all a human artist does, except it has a human prompt, which AI also has. If a human artist has a prompt that violates somebody else's copyright and then does it, he's in violation of copyright just like the derivative work of the AI would be. But the AI itself doesn't need its own inspiration. It has a human to provide it. And the USPTO has come out and said that should there be sufficient inspiration and prompting from that human, then even the AI work is valid for copyright protection. So everything that's out there already falls very squarely on the side of AI-generated art, not the individual artist. This is not necessarily a bad thing. And here's why. If you're Wizards of the Coast, backed with big Magic the Gathering money, backed with big Hasbro money, sure, you want to use an AI art program to save money and to make your stuff cheaper or to make your profits higher. You absolutely do. But you don't have to. If you want to have a well-known artist like a Larry Elmore or somebody come out and do your covers, you can easily afford that and you can make it happen. And you have the economy of scale to where even having several hundred or even a couple $1,000s spent on a piece of artwork for a new book that's coming out, a new Dragonlance book that's coming out from Wizards of the Coast, the economy of scale means that it only adds maybe $1 or $2 to your book, maybe even only 50, 60 cents to your book price, to your cost, as opposed to a small publisher where even a couple $100s to a freelance artist off Facebook is going to be a pretty significant chunk when you're looking at these independent game creators. So AI art allows an independent game creator to have a more level playing field with access to higher quality art that they can put in their books. Is it as good as human created art right now? No, it's not. AI makes some funny mistakes. My Cyberpunk game I've got, we were playing around with it, and we've got 4 and 5 armed versions of our characters. AI cannot figure out how to make a gun or how people hold a gun to save its life. The way they hold weapons, hold musical instruments, that sort of thing, seems lost on AI art at this point. But it'll get there. I mean, this is a elevator operator argument where the common artist is basically an elevator operator, and eventually the elevator is going to be good enough that it doesn't need an operator anymore. This helps level the playing field for your independent role-playing game creator. Because if I'm sitting here by myself, a one-man team trying to make a game, I'm trying to put it together. Maybe I have the talent to actually make the game. But I'm probably going to have to pay an editor, because I'm going to tell you right now, I've looked at some of these independent games. I reviewed Colonies and Conquerors before. Colonies and Conquerors needs a content editor and a style editor horribly badly. It badly needs a good editor because it's not well written and it's not well put together and it's not well laid out. And that's because the guy who made it is a game designer who's put his thought and effort and has his talent in making a game that's enjoyable to play and developing a rule system and a structure around it. He's not a copywriter, pun intended. He's not a copywriter. He's not somebody who knows he's not an editor. And just like that, he's also not an artist. So he's also hiring artists to provide decent artwork to make his books, to make his PDFs stand out, to make his stuff work, to help make a better experience for the end user and the buyer. And when you're an independent creator and you've got hundreds of dollars tied up in artwork and you're turning around trying to sell your PDFs, and the population can say they'd rather support the local game guy, the small creator, instead of the big evil corporation all they want to, but the fact of the matter remains is they buy Wizards of the Coast products or Paizo products by the thousands and the tens of thousands and the hundreds of thousands and the millions, and a small independent creator, 100, couple hundred, few thousand copies, maybe 5,000-6,000 copies if they're lucky. And that same player's like, well, you're not Wizards of the Coast. You don't have this great game design team, so I'm not going to give you $30. I'm only going to give you maybe 15. Oh, and only $15? Well, hold on some. I don't think your stuff is quite as good. It's not as polished. I don't have the cool artwork and stuff and the great hardbound physical copy. I mean, I'm only willing to pay about $10, and you better give me that PDF for 99 cents or 50 cents, or hell, the PDF better be free. Meanwhile, so you got thousands of copies. If you're super successful as an independent game designer, putting out your own PDF and that sort of thing, and that's a very successful launch of an independent TTRPG system. but you're tied up for what basically will amount to $1, $2, $5, $20 a book just in artwork costs. Meanwhile, Wizards of the Coast has pennies in artwork across the whole thing without using AI, and with using AI, they have fractions of a penny across their book. So this is a thing where I think AI is a great benefit to the small guy. It allows you to produce a higher quality product without the expense of commission artwork. In a way, I hate it for the commercial artist, for that small commercial artist, for that graphic designer who's signing on for a $40,000 or $50,000 a year salary with a Paizo or a Wizards of the Coast or something to create this kind of artwork. And in the words of the great Dusty Rhodes, "The computer took your job, baby." That's hard times. I feel for them. But at the same time, I also understand that in the same way that automobiles eventually provided massive economic benefit throughout the income strata over, say, having horses and that sort of thing, because a car is a lot less expensive to maintain than a horse, for instance, or any number of other things that have happened in history, from the Industrial Revolution, the cotton gin, moving on forward. All of these things, they bring a more level playing field when technology advances, when things get easier and less expensive for the smaller scale business to use them. So at the end of the day, I think that AI art is going to be a massive benefit to the tabletop role-playing game community, unless we turn around and become a bunch of Luddites and go out there and say, your independent RPG used AI art. Burn them at the stake. Hang them from the highest tree. Buy none of their books. By the way, the new Dungeons & Dragons Dark Sun came out, so let's go make sure we buy that in mass. Yeah, we all hate Wizards of the Coast. I hate Wizards of the Coast, but I'm still going to buy that because that's a cool-looking book and my group could use it. Don't do that. Don't be the Luddite. Support the small business and the small creator who comes out and says, hey, this is something that allowed me to make something better for your enjoyment, and I can actually afford to do it that way now because I'm not having to pay $200, $250, $50, whatever the case may be, a pop for every piece of small artwork and line drawings that show up in my book. So that's what I've got on AI art for right now. Big thing is I think it's actually a massive benefit to the tabletop role-playing game community as long as we allow it to be. And while I feel for a lot of, especially your lower to mid-level graphic artists and commercial artists, at the end of the day, it's the way forward. It's the future. You know, it's an adapt or die type situation. And unless you have some legislation that comes from the bench or legislation that comes from the halls of Congress, you're just not going to see this AI art go away, and you're not going to see some situation where scrubbing for their work becomes a copyright infringing offense. I just don't see that happening. Barring, of course, deliberate examples where somebody makes something through AI that is just naturally too similar to whatever the case, whatever they're copying. But that's what I've got on it for right now. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm evil and how I'm sucking up to the big corporations, even though this whole video is about what's good for the independent creator. Like, share, subscribe, tell everybody about this, whether you love it or hate it.